there's one thing that I want you to retain from today. And what I say to them is that interviewing is not a performance. It's not competition. It is a service, and it is of the heart. How can I help you know me? How can I support and serve this moment so you may know me? And when you interview that way, you drop out of a straight ego construct and you drop into the heart, where the heart actually is the seat of your intelligence. So I say this on my bio, my website. When mind intelligence bows to heart intelligence, life harmonizes. Ultimately, the heart is the one that's in the lead, with intuiting, with connecting, with listening, with empathy, with creativity, with courage. All of it's here. The ego is the one that's going, don't do that. I always joke with my candidates. I say, I know your ego right now is going, tell Lori you're tired and you don't want to go in and take a chance.
Welcome to a True Goddess podcast, where we inspire you to embrace your authentic self, be healed, supported, accepted, and empowered to live the life you desired. On today's episode of A True Goddess podcast, you will be in awe of the wisdom and the authenticity of Lori Wallace. Lori left her multi-six-figure corporate job to pursue her passion, becoming an agent of creation and service of the heart. Her mission is to empower authentic expression so all may freely work where their hearts intersect with the dream of the world. Lori is a social entrepreneur, business owner, and student of nature, psychology, myth, and love. With a degree in psychology from UCLA and certifications in nurtured heart approach and wild soul ecology, Lori promotes diversity and cooperation of deeper integration in all aspects of life. She founded IG Medical Search and Career Ecology to transform headhunting into human connection and empower authentic relating through her signature methods. Lori reframes the search for meaningful employment as a gateway to wholeness. Without further ado, let's meet our special guest, Lori Wallace. Hello, and welcome our listener to A True Goddess podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Lori Wallace, and I met Lori not too long ago. We hit it off right away. We share the same birthday, June 30th.
I know.
And Lori, yeah, I know, right? June 30th. And how amazing is that? Lori is a founder and CEO of Career Ecology, which is an employment agency focused on work-life empowerment. Right now, Lori lives in San Diego. Lucky you, Lori, where the desert meets the sea. Amazing. Welcome, Lori, and thank you so much for you to be on this podcast. And thank you, our listener, for tuning in. And tell us a little bit about you, Lori, how you get to be in San Diego, and a little bit about your background.
Oh, yeah. I always find that the best way to get to know someone is really kind of through their passions, a little bit as that sort of drops you or brings you from one place to another. And, I was married young at the age of 24, and the whole process after marrying my soulmate has been a process of discovery of, really shedding the old, shedding compliance, shedding some sort of story that has sort of, served up to women, especially to kind of protect our current society or the way it's structured. And it's been a process of awakening and shedding and coming into awareness of my own sensitivities, my own intuition, my own questions. And so that whole journey was, born in Phoenix, Arizona, 1965 on June 30th, in the middle of civil rights, the hottest day of the year, kind of the middle of the heat. And if I look at my life, it's been a complete process then of just what happens to animals in the desert, of shedding these skins and coming into what's true. So it was a big move to San Francisco after college with my new husband. And that was an awakening into a condensed area of innovation and diversity. And that includes also a natural environment. To go from Southern California to Northern California, where you can drive 5 minutes and there's cows and goats and roosters waking you up, to see the trees drop their leaves, to feel the chill of seasons. All of this was very awakening to me as a young woman, really between these tension spots of trying to pacify and keep everybody happy, and at the same time show up for what's true and show up for love, and address the pain I felt for the pain I saw around me. And so in a nutshell, age 36, pregnant, 8 months with my son, and bumping along, still in my little compliant state. I mean, doing some awakening. I'm 36 now. I'm still having some experiences, but still somewhat, I would say, contained as a woman. Mm-hmm. And the Twin Towers fall. I'm rushed to the hospital because I go into early labor, just like so many other women. We were all in the emergency room. And our bodies, we are animals. This is when I realized I am absolutely an animal here. I might as well be a possum. I am trying to push out this child and make sure that we are safe from this danger. Managed with medicine to keep him in, but that was the beginning of the absolute change, a metamorphosis in my life. And I looked at my husband and I said, I need to practice radical kindness. This world, I'm seeing a shift here that I never even knew was under the surface. It was always there. But we had this bubble in America, this doesn't happen here. It was happening everywhere else, and it happened to us. And I felt it deeply. And so left my executive job in banking, dropped from a high salary, close to 200,000 down to 40,000 draw to become a recruiter. And I moved my family to Portland, Oregon, where the sun just didn't shine as much as I was used to. But we went there, and I fell in love certainly with the trees. But I wanted to help people transition in their lives. I needed to practice radical kindness. And what I found was that recruiting itself is a sales job for most. So I quit that and started my own agency in 2005 and transformed headhunting into human connection and flooded it with feminine values of responsiveness, of patience, of slow if need be, of holding neutral space, of not trying to over-convince or cajole or sell or close anybody. I held space for people to discover themselves. And I started to recognize this absence that most feel of being able to be authentic in the world, of being seen for who they are. I saw so much pain with people at work, in between jobs, at jobs, not being understood by their colleagues or their bosses. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of my yearning to have more space to support that. And there were teachers like Michael Meade, who's a phenomenal mythologist, who talks about how critical it is at this time that we no longer are agents of change. We need to be agents of creation. And in order to be an agent of creation, each person needs to show up authentically and bring their genius. And he said, wherever you are, it was almost a call to action. Wherever you're doing, make sure you're helping people do that work. And of course, I was dead center in the middle of that. I'm a recruiter and I'm coaching and counseling. And that's when Career Ecology birthed up out of a crack where I suddenly stopped making income. In 2015-16, my business was very busy, but no income was coming in. And it was very scary. I was a primary breadwinner. I felt suddenly like a loser. I was walking around having all these terrible negative thoughts, and moved forward with faithfulness in terms of collaborating with the unforeseen, in terms of understanding that something was happening beyond my understanding, beyond my visual or mental construct. And I decided to play with a threefold path. And one was my business would come back to life just in time, just one more match, and then we could pay these bills on this mortgage in Berkeley. Or two, something new would birth out just in time with added income. Or three, we would sell our home, take our money, and run. And number three was the one that won out. I wanted number one to win in my mind. But number three was the one, and we sold our home very fast. And we moved to San Diego sight unseen. Mm-hmm. And it was the best move at that time and in my life, because we came down 30% in cost of living, which meant I had 30% more time. And that allowed me to birth Career Ecology, which is dedicated to liberating people's hearts and their authenticity and empowering them to show up in the world as they are. And truly, honestly, Sass, I feel that if each and every person is liberated this way, that we can live in harmony, really in a beautiful state of collaboration where diversity is a key driver, rather than right now how we see in the world around us. We're all being kind of put into our place, into our role. Women as compliant supporters, never get angry, whatever it might be. You stay over here, and various people, and men, you don't feel, you're just out there, just sort of strong and taking action, or whatever. And it's their boxes. So thankfully for that whole process, every single episode, high and low, I've leaned into with all my heart and all my gratitude as a significant teacher, and basically always said, what's the guidance? And then I responded. And that's what leads me here to you today.
Wow. That is an amazing story and a great transformation. And you have such a great heart. You take whatever that most people perceive as maybe a difficult situation, you turn it around and make it so beautiful, and you created this beautiful company, and I'm just like in awe with what I saw on your website. It is amazing what you do. And just go back to what you say about how we, women especially, men too, because men were taught to be tough and you cannot feel, and we as human, male and female, both alike, we are put into a box. We are not allowed to feel all the feeling that we feel, and then we end up just pleasing other people and live to other people's expectation. And what you do with career ecology is get people in touch with their authenticity and bring that out into their resume and their work life.
Yeah, I mean,
explain a little bit more.
Absolutely, because it's, that box, I think is a really good analogy, is how can we climb out of that box? And what does it look like when you're outside of the box? And does it serve you? Can you still professionally be safe and seen? And what I really have come just being I've been such an active observer, and I've been experimenting. I love the idea. Claire Dubois of Tree Sisters said this to me one time. She's the founder of a global organization that plants trees and also enables women into their fullness, coming back into their wholeness. And she said, life is an experiment. You can never fail, only learn. So my whole career has been that I am not afraid to step into the fire and to experiment. And so with all these 20 years, I've been able to have deep, long conversations with employers. I have recruited from a new graduate all the way up to a CEO and everything in between. And I'll tell you that a CEO's concern about being seen and interviewing and how to express themselves, it's the same as a new graduate. Everybody in that instance is concerned about, unfortunately, performance. And what I say to them in every instance is that life is not a performance. And I'm going to go ahead and shatter that idea. We all are born told that it is. You need to dress, look, act, behave in a certain way, perform, and you'll be rewarded. And, if we had everyone in the world, imagine where would we be without, in terms of the arts, if everybody showed up the same way? We would have no art, we would not have an individual expression that needs to be seen. We wouldn't have Monet, we wouldn't have Mozart, we wouldn't have Sting, we wouldn't have, all of them coming up to today. We need that individual expression. And so, how can I support people all along the way? And I really learned through the years that at every communication touch point, there is a very significant opportunity to set that up, to hold an expression that's wholly authentic, as well as still professional and supportive, with guiding somebody into your story. So a big thing I say to people, I do this coaching of mindful interviewing. It's a full hour coaching session prior to an interview. And I say to them, hey, this is going to be, basically soul for your career, yoga or whatever you might want to say. No, it's yoga for your career soul. Let's put it that way. It could be the other way. And I say, so you'll use this forever. And I said, but for some reason, if you're unable to retain what we talk about, there's one thing that I want you to retain from today. And what I say to them is that interviewing is not a performance. It's not competition. It is a service, and it is of the heart. How can I help you know me? How can I support and serve this moment so you may know me? And when you interview that way, you drop out of a straight ego construct and you drop into the heart, where the heart actually is the seat of your intelligence. So I say this on my bio, my website. When mind intelligence bows to heart intelligence, life harmonizes. Ultimately, the heart is the one that's in the lead, with intuiting, with connecting, with listening, with empathy, with creativity, with courage. All of it's here. The ego is the one that's going, don't do that. I always joke with my candidates. I say, I know your ego right now is going, tell Lori you're tired and you don't want to go in and take a chance. And I'm like, of course it's saying that. It's just saying quit. Why not? The ego's not the one behind your courage. It's your heart. The ego really, beautiful ego, I'm not going to diss it. I'm going to say we're mortal, we're flesh and bone, and we need the ego so that we can live safely. The ego helps us make sure we set our alarm on time. It is analytical. It does understand potential danger. It'll say, might say, Lori, I think moving to Europe, and just dropping it all and leaving your family behind, maybe not a good idea, because maybe you won't make money and your mom's sick, you need to be near her. And my ego's going through the whole list. And I'm like, right, even though my heart's like, go to Paris, or I wanted to go to Europe or something like that. So we're in partnership, but the thing is, we're raised to have the ego in the lead. So the dynamic is open up, do not shun, do not push away or isolate the ego. Allow it to present itself in its full list. Bring it in, consider it, go through the motion until you feel complete. Then take your cleansing breath in and out to shift gears, drop into your heart, and then say, I'm open to the guidance, and wait 48 hours, 2 days. 48 hours is what it takes for the whisper of the heart to be heard, because the ego is the dominant voice in your head. And the ego voice can also be a voice that sometimes we don't remember, we realize, is that my father or my mother's voice? Or is that society's voice? So it's loud. And it's like going to a party. It's the extrovert in the middle that's just sort of, out there. And the heart's in the corner whispering love, poetry, and sonnets. So we need 2 days. And so I don't even allow anyone I work with will allow. I mean, if they want to, they can do what they want. But I suggest that I say, I'm going to call you in 2 days. And I want to see what's rising for you, what you've been dreaming of, and the whispers of your heart. And let's see where your divine path leads you at this point. Let's just play, and let's play along. Let's hold neutral space for dreaming. And when we do that, we move outside of a constricted way and we open up to this dream state where truly, our energies, because, right now, if you were to put some sort of electrometer or something on me, you would see that my heart and your heart is radiating magnetically about 5,000 times greater and farther out than my mind and your mind. Our heart is just full of neuron cells. So it's thinking and sending information, and the brain is responding. But imagine if we cut off the heart, then it's only this loop in our ego mind that tends to keep us in a box and small. So there's this practice through how we interview. It's a complete flip. It is dramatic, and it actually can be applied in every part of our lives. And then in the resume, which I call feng shui your resume, and feng shui, for any listener that doesn't know what that is, it's the idea that came to us from China about arranging your home and your space for greatest fortune and prosperity, meaning that you need to have air and water needs to flow through a space unrestricted for greatest prosperity. Resumes are very, very blocky and restrictive. I can jump into a resume, obviously I look at hundreds in a month, and I'll drop into a resume, and right away I can be blocked from knowing and understanding this person. because of missing information or a misordering or a tense, maybe if it's in first person, but I'm expecting this type of person, or there's no summary, or whole blocks are missing altogether. Maybe I have to open a browser to try to make sense of something. Any of these kinds of actions that I would have to do to know someone is a lost opportunity. It's a break in the feng shui. I'm unable to flow through someone's story. And even beyond flowing through a story is whether or not the story has even been shaped and lifted according to that individual's presentation to say, hey, this is me. I want to help you know me. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out these aspects that truly define my greatest strengths, how I respond and can relate to your work and what you do. And so you want to have a design that allows for that sort of shaping to go on, rather than the typical linear resume that they try to keep to one page or two, that's really based on how to compare one widget to another. It's just this old industrial aged kind of idea. It's so boxy and it's so constricted. So the feng shui resume still respects some of the tradition that we're used to and that application tracking systems expect technology-wise. But it actually does sort of a Miyagi. I sort of like the Karate Kid. We sort of Miyagi everything. Exactly. We Miyagi it and we bring it all, and it's beautifully shaped. And I just got a message from someone yesterday who sent me a follow-up after 2 years we did her resume. She said she still vibrates and resonates with how this process brought her out of a place of what she had before of shame and confusion over her career. And her situation it's been one of experimentation. And when we went through her career, we realized that she actually is an expert now in helping whole families, with nutrition and finance and land management and crisis management. And we brought forward, and this has been after 30 years of work and what she's been doing, and now her craft. She had not seen herself that way. And as a result of Feng Shui resume, she now feels like she's brought in all her fragmented pieces and she's whole. And now she can bring her gifts because she's in touch with her own self now. How else could she even help someone know her if she didn't even know herself or even appreciate her journey and her gifts and her genius?
It's like telling a story, right? Like
yes.
When a resume is so dry. I mean, it's like bullet point, 1, 2, 3. And, a person can be a CEO of this company and a CEO of that company, but you cannot compare the two. You have to tell the story, what that person do and who they are and how did they, whatever. But I look at the example of your feng shui resume. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's like, wow, way back then when I was applying for jobs, I wish I would have met you. But literally, it does bring out a different aspect, the real aspect of yourself, and more empowered to stand. And this is what we are about. A True Guarded podcast is to bring people like you to help empower women, especially to kind of stand in their power, to be comfortable, to be authentic, right?
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of that in what you do.
I'll say one quick thing on that too, is just that I do these resumes for women that have been home for 10, 15 years and have been taking care of home, children, elders, the household, the finances, and they want to get back to work. The Feng Shui resume is also a beautiful format for telling that story. Mm-hmm. And it's just so many people feel like my story doesn't fit in a resume. Mm-hmm. And when you turn it into a service share of story, it really does. And there's a lot of room for creativity with that. So you're right. It is this beautiful, beautiful storytelling. And it's interesting because it birthed out of my CEO search that I did, and seeing the board of directors and how busy they were, and how very important it was for them to understand the technical, but they really needed to hire someone that was aligned with their culture. And I was able to create this sort of summary sheet in a way that spoke to that. And that's when I had the aha to bring that together with somewhat of a traditional that needed a whole bunch of other feng shui elements, though there was still work to be done there. So it's really been born out of, kind of people's pain and needs. Mm-hmm. And when I brought it to a couple chief pharmacy officers or VPs or various people, in heading pharmacy and hospitals and large scale hospitals, they practically wept because some of them have to go through something like 100 to 200 resident resumes as they're looking at other resumes to fill positions. Mm-hmm. And this allowed them so easily, without so much friction, to receive somebody's brilliance. And to them, it was revolutionary, and evolutionary for their own energy systems and their own capacity to meet people.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. I have a background in pharmacy, as we know, and our resume as a pharmacist are very, very, very dried, and you cannot know one pharmacist from the other just looking at their resume. It is like so similar, and we're like, so how can we pick, right? How can we pick the person that their values and the company's value are aligned together? And I can listen to you talk all day about feng shui and how the water flows, and I was like, oh, this is like a sleep story.
That's so good.
It's so
healing.
It's so appealing, it's so nourishing, and it's just so peaceful. It's not like, when you go out and you're trying to find somebody to fill a position, right? And you're just anxious because you have other stuff to do, and then you have to shift through so many different paperwork. And you train people to get in touch with that and to craft their resume.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. On my website, I am certifying people to be feng shui resume writers, because this should just get out. I mean, only one person, how many can I do? And so for that person that sees themselves and has always showed up in the world as a storyteller, as a coach, as a deep listener, and that also is looking to kind of, serve and have a gig side job and things. This is extremely gratifying. And so I have a very specific training at the end where somebody completes their own resume. It's hard when you have to do your own, because I added that little part because I want people to understand and really feel how difficult this is for their potential clients, and also to break through any barriers of tuning in to yourself, of turning your gaze inward, for reflecting on your past. This is a barrier that keeps us fragmented, again, separate from self. So anything we can do in any of these processes to break through that, walk over, I always say, I'm walking on the hot coals, I'm burning off, old constricted skin. I really want to be new. I want to be raw. I want to grow. So this whole process does that. And then by doing your own resume, you come into connection, because I'll be reflecting at the end and certifying it, that I provide feedback as well. So it's super juicy. It's super good. Yeah. So definitely check that out. Anybody who's interested.
Yeah, great. Yeah. It's, anybody who wants to, work with Lori, my gosh, I'm like, I want to work with Lori. I'm not looking for any job, but just to like bring out your authenticity. I think that is just amazing. And in the process of birthing this and helping a lot of people out there, you also went through your healing journey. You see a lot of pain around you, and your own suffering on top of that, because you feel other people's pain. Do you mind sharing? Because I'm sure your story is magnificent, and it will help so many people, because here you are, a shining, true goddess, an owner and CEO of this amazing company. But you've been through some rough times to get to this point. And there's also many people out there going through some rough time right now, and they want to get past that. What if you can share a little bit of your wisdom going through your journey, that would be great.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, as I talk about my own journey too, it's still a journey within a bubble of privilege. It's a journey of health. It's a journey of, unfortunately, also some, almost violent, situations in college between, men and women, the way women are treated, and all sorts of stuff has happened to me, but it's still within the bubble of being white-skinned. And so, I spend a great deal of my time really contemplating and understanding from a physical, emotional, spiritual perspective how my Black skin friends, for example, go to sleep and their cortisol doesn't come down, because there's a constant state heightened awareness of violence or being excluded in, many ways in our country. So my journey, I don't have that. So I have a responsibility then, just really from my own heart, to open up and try to understand all of these aspects of the trauma that we all feel and experience. And I'm reading right now. There's a big old red book back there. You can barely see that it's red and yellow, but it's Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal. And he talks about how every single person is traumatized. Boom. Okay. Let's just say that there is no normal, because the minute you come out of your mother's womb, you no longer get automatic food and warmth, and you go, whatever, poopy, and that's gone. And, so you come out,
you come out crying, screaming and crying.
You're screaming, crying, I'm wet, I'm hungry, I'm sleepy, I'm tired, I'm scared, I'm, all these things. Yeah. So the trauma can even be just by being alive. But then you might also have a parent that was traumatized in their youth. They were ignored by their parent or abused or whatever, or in any sort of bubble where they're facing society. So they're traumatized. And so now they're trying to parent, and a traumatized parent often, kind of brings their trauma. It becomes kind of generational, So we're dealing with this, constant cycle of just this general trauma going on in this shaping and boxing. And how Gabor Mate talks about it is he says, anytime that you cannot show up authentically in the moment, you are traumatized. Because what happens is that you split from self. You literally abandon yourself. Mm-hmm. And the greatest fear, from what I've been reading, there's another book I'm reading right now. Where's the title? I always forget it, but I'll find it. But it's really about the history of violence in the human family. And it's the idea that trauma that we have in ourselves, it is in our DNA to be afraid of the dark, to be afraid of big tooth things that might eat us or kill us. Because for the majority of the time, we have not been apex predators. We have been preyed upon. And so this inherent anxiety that we have keeps us either living in this place of having to over control and in this ego fear place, or we use what we've been given as humans to evolve, where we say, got you, got the fear. Okay, I hear you, I understand. And then we drop into this heart where this wisdom that connects us as a human family to the brilliance of this universe and this capacity to take these chances and to rise to a higher consciousness. So my temperament is generally optimism and resilience. But little did I know that as a girl that I was really born into quite a box of compliance. So when I got to college, it was a horrible experience of drinks being, drugged, and drugs going into my drink and not knowing it, and various things. It was a huge, horrible experience and awakening to the violence that women experience. So now, since I've experienced that, I have a great deal of understanding around the violence just between the two genders, men and women, and I've always had a lot of questions about why. And because I've experienced to a certain extent, I am now have more understanding and compassion for all the bits and pieces that create this dynamic. And then, so I'm taking that, which was very harmful in my ability to have a healthy marriage. So right away, my husband and I get married at 24. We started a marriage therapy. We had 6 or 7 horrible therapists. It's always the luck of the draw. Mm-hmm. If you find somebody that's really good, a lot of therapists here's my little piece of advice, by the way. Everybody, therapy is great. And we need to touch our wounds. but make sure your therapist has gone through therapy.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be with somebody who's turned in and faced their own wounds. That's just absolutely critical if you're going to go ahead and work on your own, that you have somebody who's doing that work. Okay. So I don't think we had that with the first 6. Finally, we get with somebody, who does have that. And this is all kind of happening around the time that I birthed my child at age 36, had some infertility, all this. So meanwhile, I'm dealing with what happened in college. I'm closed off. My therapist is telling me, you've got to face this if you want to have a loving, open, authentic relationship with your husband and child. Do you want that? And I said, yes. I mean, there was no hesitation. And he said, sit down right now and let's start to talk, and I just because before that, I was literally saying, oh, we don't need to talk about it. It's not the worst that I've seen out there, and he's like, what? Therapy is about talking about, that's what it is. So I was ready to talk about my husband's issues. I wasn't me, and he ended up, I know, it's like, we're going to talk about his moodiness,
I can handle it. I got it,
Yeah, I was like, no, we're going to talk about your pain. And he ended up telling me, and here I am again, the optimist, and my husband's a deep melancholic. So he's the grumpy grump, and I'm the sunshine girl or whatever. All the other therapists told my husband, I want you to breathe to 10 and then talk to Lori. So everything was always focused on him. This therapist said, Lori, you're the heart of the problem right now. And I'm like, what? No one's ever said that. What do you mean? And he said, because you keep everything locked away and you're just sunshine and you're compliant and you're just burying things, you are creating an environment in your family and your relationship that breeds insecurity, because your husband knows there's something going on. He knows there's a wound or a pain or something unaddressed, and it makes him feel very insecure. And so he acts out. And so that was, I get tooth tears sometimes when I talk. I would have to say, and I didn't expect I was going to talk about this because I have my other getting really ill thing that happened in my life, but this was so critical in order to, I cry. Are you Barbara Walters? You make people cry. No.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
But it's okay.
No, it's so good. It's just a little tear.
Show up authentically, and I didn't know this story.
I didn't tell you this part because I realized it's so central that we're talking about authentic relating, that the very, very, very first part of that is nurturing and loving yourself. And it's the wounds, it's like the gift is right behind the wound, as they say, because the wound is, if you go into that and you find your healing, now you're an expert, you're credible. You actually now have deep intrinsic knowing that allows you to help heal it in the world. Right now, there are people on all sides of their feelings about Prince Harry and Meghan. I am a supporter of them speaking about their wounds, because they are trying right now to be seen and have their story out, but they're processing their own, and they're at the beginning of this journey. And I see this as an act of rawness, truth, and the beginning of coming back into relationship to their own wounds and to their own self. And so in this in my embodied book that I have called Way of the Monarch, which is about shedding the old, awakening the imaginal, and flying free. The whole thing is about a liberation of the heart. And it's all based on nature's wisdom. We get to a section where Wolf is actually our guide, who's talking to us about authentic relating. And actually right before, I meant to say, in Whale, in this portion of Whale is teaching us about deep storytelling and kind of going into our oceanic hearts. And it's there that I guide people through this graphic I have of a tree. And I said, let's first put down all of your wounds and wonders, starting from your ancestry, your parents, your siblings in childhood, to your own childhood experiences, to your teen, adult, up, and take a look at that story. And what is that thread? What is that theme of wounding and wonder that is bringing you down now to a place like you can heal that? And would that be now pointing you towards your work in the world to bring us all back to wholeness? So my theme is authentic relating. Had I had my wits about me, had I understood my boundaries and my sovereignty as a woman, I do not believe what happened to me in college would have happened. I know that my ability to become a recruiter and leave and start my own agency was because of after September 11th and seeing that wounding in the world and going through my complete autoimmune, my body just collapsed on me, that I was like, okay, I'm going to respond to this moment. I'm going to choose and lean in, to finding the truth and finding that story and that authenticity and bringing that forward, saying, we need more listening. When I was working as a recruiter for someone else, he would sit with his watch and he'd say, Lori, you've been talking for 4 minutes. That's enough. And I'd say to him, this is going to be an hour-long conversation with this individual because they've been laid off. They're also had a death of a parent. They also are confused and they may have to move and lose their home. And I started to voice this, and bring this forward and start to speak about trauma, about hope, about strength and resilience. So for me, my thread is authentic relating. For Prince Harry, it's mental health. That's why he's an advocate for that. He watched his mom's mental health decline and her death and what happened to his wife and so forth. So that theme for me has really been this loss of identity and sovereignty and reclaiming that and recognizing it may not mesh and match with every person. And that's okay, because the way that we integrate, if we imagine that we're all just a big human family and we're a gorgeous web, not every part of that web touches the other part. It does sink in through a very complicated process, but there's not necessarily a direct link there. And I think in the past, for women, it's like, I need to make sure that everything or every person or everything that I do is in compliance in one way or another. And I realized, no, that doesn't serve the whole. It doesn't serve diversity and cooperation. So that, social, human sovereignty, and then the complete decline in my health, where I had to leave allopathic medicine, go to naturopathic because I had fibromyalgia. I had a whole, kind of paralyzed on the left side of my body. I had lost 20 pounds and my eyes were swollen shut with blepharitis. I just massive styes and just weeping, just my eyes weeping with all sorts of, stuff and just peeling skin. I wasn't able to digest food. And I had adrenal exhaustion. So I had like no cortisol left. And I was still waking up to breastfeed my child at 5 times a night.
My gosh, we have so much in common.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. First, we share the same birthday, June 30th.
So big.
And my firstborn, my son, was born in the same year. I was holding him. He was just a few months old. July, August, September. He just like 2 months old when 9/11 hit. And
your firstborn?
Yes.
That's
and I went through some physical stuff when he was born because I had a car accident and then I couldn't even get up out of bed, and I was like, oh my gosh, we didn't know this about each other. I know we share a lot of commonality, but I can tell me and you we're just like gonna be long life friends.
We were in the previous life.
yeah, but thank you so much for sharing that story. I'm sure it touches you, right? It touches your heart. It bring up the old wounds that you dealt with it, but you're still human with a human emotion. You still feel that. Even though you now walk into your amazing divinity, the goddess, and you still, living in the duality, right? You have to live in this world of the 3D, right? The expectation, the job, you have to pay the bills and stuff like that. And then balancing that. That's why the feng shui come in, and you make it flow so well in your life. And it's just beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it just, moving from friction to flow is, I think, a feminine gift that we have. And every man has this in them as well. We're masculine and feminine in all of our bodies. So it's not just a woman-man thing, but women, just by the nature of our hormones and how we're born and with our wombs and things, think we're always looking for that way to bring people into a womb space of care, nurturance, and flow. And it's been a bit hijacked, or I'd say kind of used and abused in a way to keep women in a particular box. Like, well, that's your natural tendency, so we'll just keep you over here. But actually, those traits, that desire, that capacity in us belongs in government, and it belongs in healthcare, belongs in finance, belongs in science. I honestly think that had women been at the table when cities were being designed, when government was being formed, we would have had a constitution that had equality for every human. You know, we in Los Angeles, we would still have our little railways or something. We would have these other transportation models rather than, you know, just stuck with all these roads and everything it does to our environment. We would not be felling whole forests if we had had wholeness, if we had allowed and appreciated diversity. So we women right now, we are everywhere. We have infiltrated everywhere, except for the presidency of the United States. It's coming, but we are everywhere. It's coming. And all we have to do is show up in our wholeness. I'll tell you something, Ashley. About 6 years ago, when I was coaching people on how to do those little tests at the beginning, like when they would get a job offer and someone said, well, I'd like you to do our little survey, our little kind of culture, you know, psychology survey or whatever. I would say to people, answer this as your masculine self, as your business self, and you'll do well. I had to do that because when women would do it in their fullness, they would be, if let's say the job had some business development and they came across as highly empathic, they might not get the job. That almost happened to me as a recruiter. I was told I was way too high on empathy, which turned out to be my superpower. It is. Now, you know, if I were coaching you and you were doing a test, I'd say, show up fully in your wholeness. You will match and it'll spark something in that other side. Hopefully the system won't just, you know, knock you out, but do it. This is what the world needs right now. And it will serve you. It will serve you. You'll end up where you belong. I believe it now. And I think we're really at a place where we women just take that deep breath in and out and through love saying, because I love, I am going to show up as all I am. And it's for love. It's for something so much bigger than us. And this is, again, my tooth tears. And that's why I had my tooth tears when I talked about my story. It wasn't the pain that I had from the past. It was the connection to the love, the pain that connects to the love, the chance to greater understand the wound for others and myself, you know? So, yeah.
I think we are actually more strong when we stand in our vulnerability, right? Yeah. Whatever experiences, like you said, that you've been through is actually becoming your superpower, you know? And a lot of women especially are afraid to be their true self because they are afraid to be seen as weak. Especially the CEO, you know, people in higher position, right? You have to act tough, you know, put on that suit and don't feel. And I run across some, you know, a few women in high position who just cannot or will not allow themselves to feel, and they're like robots.
Oh yeah.
It's just so sad. They're more robotic than men.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is a conversation that we women needs to have. And as you know, people who've been through business, who've been through high level position, who own businesses, and we come out and say, you know, just be yourself, be your authentic self. And it's okay to have the feminine and the masculine. It's okay. And the men can be men and the women can be the women. And we just come as we are.
And, you know, a lot of people will say, well, that's great, but how can I do that safely? Because there's a lot of built-in danger. And that's what we learn in Way the Monarch under Wolf, is we talk about how nature does it. I mean, you know, unfortunately, you and I, well, maybe fortunately, we don't have the white stripe down our back, you know, where we can kind of cause a stink, you know. But, you know, or if I had like a little rattle and, you know, let's say I'm talking to somebody and they've kind of trespassed over a boundary of mine that I'm like getting triggered, or I'm realizing that's not okay for me, I could just go, and they go, oh, We don't have that as humans. So there's a whole host of confusion around boundaries. And it goes even further because women especially have been denied our boundaries because we're supposed to be 100% of service to other, and we can't have boundaries because that's not in service. That's not completely giving or whatever. And so we talk about how nature does it, and they're signaling safety first, and they're asking for permission before they dive in and share, and we aren't doing that. We're just kind of like my husband and I for years, we're such opposite temperaments, and I would dive right in, like, let's say, in COVID or something, I'd be like, hey, I'm ready to go to the restaurant and have lunch on the outside tables. That was way over my husband's boundary. He is so vigilant and careful. I needed to come to him with, I so appreciate your vigilance around COVID. I want you to know I see you. Signal safety. Second, is now an okay time to talk a little bit about our agreements around what we're going to do in our COVID bubble? If he has a headache, he's going to say no. I don't want to step into a boundary where he's not feeling well. If he says yes, then I'll say, I have a thought. What if we go get pizza and we sit at the outdoor table? Now, here's the thing. After you engage, you're still not done. There's an aspect of dominance if I leave my idea on the table like that. Next, I have to say to him, what do you think? And I re-invite the diversity of thought and collaboration. I invite him back. And then he's like, I'm still not ready. And I say, how about if I go with my friend Sally? Are you comfortable with me going and coming back home? Yes, I'm comfortable with that. Great, that works for me too. So I train, and I've had some really, really interesting, I won't bring them up now, but interesting conversations where people have felt like I am going to be fired on the spot if I share what's true, if I authentically represent what I'm feeling, what I know to be true in the room.
It's the art of sharing, right?
It's the art. It's sharing like nature does. And we can draw people in to reduce their defensive systems and to literally open the way for us to share. And it's safe. And so it's this whole process of deeply honoring and respecting boundaries. And also, if we do trigger somebody else's, and maybe they're not skilled yet in how to explain that to us, but they have a reaction, they trigger, we can say, hey, tension breeds trust. I realize I've stepped. Can you let me know what your needs are? I want to come back into alignment with you. I know I triggered your boundary. That's because I'm in your life. It's because I care to be in your life. And I'm learning. So she'll share that with me. So we can recognize that these tension moments are all actually an expression of each other being in each other's lives. How else would we get close to each other's boundaries? So it's a whole nother conversation to have. It's fascinating. Boundaries is a big area.
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge. I have a lot of that conversation with my clients and, with my significant other too. We talk a lot about that. And I, as a woman, have to learn because, like you say, society said you have to be of a service, and we grow up like people pleaser, and that's like 99% of the women out there, and the 1% turn into a robot, and it's a huge topic. And I was just talking to a client literally just yesterday about boundaries, and a lot of people, they're not aware of it. High level professionals, doctorate degree, lawyers, they are not aware of this, and they don't know what it means, and they're afraid if they would just look into, I need boundaries, it's gonna point to them that they are weak. No, you're not weak. You are actually take responsibility for your happiness, for your success, and it is a good thing to look into setting boundaries and learning how to communicate and all those stuff. That's excellent.
Be the CEO of your own life, your own body. Exactly. And if you're CEO of a business, then someone's like, let's be a grocery store, and let's also sell clothes, and let's also do grooming for dogs, and the CEO's gonna be like, whoa. We're doing natural food, and you
That's
can
right.
Shirts, but come on. So it's like we're always considering what are the resources, what's available, what makes sense for ourselves and others,
How you do anything is how you do everything. So how you show up in your life is how you show up in your business. So that's why work-life balance and the feng shui way is the best approach.
Yeah. I love feng shui.
We almost ran out of time, and I would love for you to come back and talk to us and give us your wisdom even more. I literally it's like, oh, should I say something? You said, I just want to sit here and listen to you. You have so much wisdom and so much to share, especially for our listener who women in general. You can be a housewife, you can be a mother, you can be anybody, and this is the place for you to shine, to get ideas from experts like Lori. And Lori, before we go, and I'm sad that our time is coming to an end for this session. What is the one golden nugget that you would want to leave for our listener right now?
I know. I think it was. I think it's obviously along the theme we've been talking about here, is just to contemplate authenticity, and to what extent you feel free with that in your personal life as an adult, as a partner, as potentially a parent, as a friend, as a woman, a man, or any gender in between, or anything. And recognizing that from a biomimic standpoint, taking this to nature's wisdom, which is 4.5 billion years, successful evolution, that the success of this world, in I like the word success, but the harmony, the wellness of this world depends on each being, each living being, each even inanimate, which seems to be inanimate, but a rock really isn't either. But each part of this earth needs to be its authentic self. And if you look outside your window right now, there's no way that you see that bee that's jealous of that hummingbird. It's just busy doing its thing. It's going for pollen and it's going to make some honey, or that worm isn't wishing, that it could be the possum, or the sky isn't wishing that it could be the stone. I mean, everything is in its absolute fullness, and it creates harmony in this world. So show up as you are and find that support that you can, to understand within a world that is actively working to keep you from that. What is that safe flow path? This isn't going to be violent. This isn't going to be difficult. What is the safe flow process where it fits within our modern world, and you gently and openly get to be yourself, and it's just going to click. It's going to feel so good. It's going to feel good for your body. No more autoimmune. So that's it. Keep pursuing that. That would be my advice.
Beautiful. Be your authentic self. Reveal that authentic self, and you are guaranteed to shine and to be happy, and get rid of all this autoimmune disease, right? It's pretty much your body fighting against itself. That's what autoimmune is. And if you're not being yourself, then your body gonna hey, it's gonna scream. It's gonna scream.
Oh, the body knows. There's so much disease that comes out of all this inauthenticity, for sure.
Yeah.
That's what Gabor Mate talks about. It's a great book. Yeah.
Amazing. Can you show us that book?
Here it is. And it's look how big it is.
Oh my gosh.
So good. And if you haven't seen any of his videos, this man is in his late 70s, maybe almost early 80s, late 70s. And he is a deep melancholic. He's a deep, deep, deep feeler. And he experienced the Holocaust, and he knows this trauma. And so he comes forward, and he is really helping us to normalize and understand that we're all at one state or another of trauma, and that is actually what brings us to healing in the world. It's through trauma. It's like if you just came in and everything was just vanilla, or lukewarm, where would we ever grow or seek out love? Where would we ever question or wonder about things? Right. We would just kind of be in this lukewarm state. So that trauma is that teaching, that entry point towards so much wisdom, so much love.
Amazing. Yeah. One of my mentors told me this. She said, you know how people say live in the present, right? And it doesn't matter if it seems traumatic, it seems sad, it seems like, like you're going through some deep, dark storm. It's that one present moment that never come again. Whatever you go through is, like you said earlier, what is the what can I learn from that? What is the lesson, right? And just embrace that. Embrace your past, forgive it, and let it go, and shine out as your true, authentic self. I love it. We are so like in tune with each other, and I like to give my my podcast guests this luxury of 3 wishes.
Oh yeah.
And tell me this: if you have a genie in a bottle and you can wrap the bottle or the whatever that is, and make your wish 3 wishes, what would those be?
I'm going to share my wishes, and the truth is I'm actually working on them and making them hopefully true. The first wish, and I have it written down here because I wanted to remember I thought about them. I would wish that every parent would be taught the nurtured heart approach to parenting and partnering. So the formation of the human, lives out of love consciousness instead of fear-based consciousness, and that's set in childhood. So we can nurture and raise children to live from the resilient hearts. So that is number one. And I mentioned to you before we started that, I'm hoping to get in front of the Girls and Boys Club and for free, offer the training to these parents in my community. Number 2, I would wish that animals and plants were respected the way Native Americans have always respected and loved and been inspired by them. I wish that we had learned from them rather than devastated and decimated that community. And hopefully it's not too late for us to learn from them and to live that way. And number 3, I would wish that humans would learn from biomimicry all the ways that nature solves problems. Then we humans could live in harmony with the earth and each other. There's so much from an engineering perspective, from a resource perspective, social perspective. It's all already out there. We don't need to make it up. Right. It's just how to harmonize and how to save water and how to regenerate. And it's just out there. And there's the biomimicryinstitute.org. I recommend anybody looking that up. And it's gonna shorten your cycle, socially feedback loops, a whole bunch of, it just shortens your cycle to success right there. Just look to nature. So
awesome. And guess what? Someone said over 2,000 years ago that ask and you shall receive. When you put it out there to the universe and it go bing, all your wishes will come true.
Okay. Good job. I'm a believer.
Me too. Yeah. And if anybody want to get a hold of Lori, you have a website. Is www.careerecology.com. Right?
Yes,
and
you
then
can reach me there. Also LinkedIn. Yeah.
You're also on LinkedIn. Is www.linkedin.com/in/Lori LORI Wallace WALLACE, and I will put all this in the description. Thank you so much, Lori, for your presence, for your authenticity, for your vulnerability, for your wisdom, and for being example of many women. For me, to look up to. You're an amazing person and a true goddess, and that's why I invite you to be on this podcast. You fit all the checks. Thank you so much, and hopefully you come back again and we'll talk some more on different topics.
Thank you for reaching out and creating this bond. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lori.